Let's freaking go! We are breaking down the latest LSU football practice footage that was released today.
You know, I think the identity is starting to kind of show itself.
There was also an extended practice period where the media was able to watch and not film. I'm going to share with you some of their observations and at the same time give you a few thoughts on how I feel practice is progressing. And the guy that had the biggest day out of anyone on the team was Sage Ryan.
You know, Sage obviously is a guy that we moved around all over trying to find a spot for him. You know, he's got speed, he's got athleticism. Obviously, that was a position that, needed some depth, and he provides, obviously, that experience that was lacking at that position.
He had not one, not two, but apparently 3 interceptions today at practice. So, could Sage Ryan be a full-time starting defensive back? We're going to talk about him. And, of course, mostly talk about this LSU secondary who looked like they had a really good day. I also heard Garrett Nussmeier had a few good plays, also had a few picks as well. And then at the end, we're going to talk about Rickie Collins and, of course, AJ Swann. So you see, obviously, this is Jake Olson working with the safeties group in the background. And I want to start with that. It looked as if the LSU starting secondary was Javian Toviano at corner, and then the opposite corner was Ashton Stamps. And your 3 safety alignment was Sage Ryan as the true free safety. The opposite safety was Jordan Gilbert, and the star kind of rover nickel player was, well, Major Burns. And I know a lot of you are going to feel some type of way about that. Heck, I have my qualms about that, knowing how much Major Burns and Sage Ryan struggled last season. But it is important to note that these 2 roles are new roles for both of them, right? Of course, last season, Major Burns was mostly a safety, and a true safety at that. He rarely played in that nickel-ish kind of role. So this could be something where they found some new spots, and this is where they're going to play. Someone to keep an eye out for, obviously, is Jordan Allen. But the guy who ends up winning this starting job very well could be Deshaun McBride, the true freshman, top 100 recruit. And I'm just going to give a little preview here for my patrons. He, at this present time, has my highest high school grade out of anyone in the 2024 recruiting class. So I really do like Deshaun McBride, going all the way back to when he dominated at camps with really good spark athleticism scores. That's him with Kylan Jackson in the background. And now you do see Sage Ryan right here. This is Joel Rogers, Ryan Yates, who has some playing experience, is mixed in there. So this secondary is still wide open. You have so many transfer portal guys that have come in who, of course, has not actually really played all that much at their prior stops, but they had good recruiting grades like Jair Brown, Austin Osbury, and so on and so on. So this secondary is far from finished, but that was the group that it played in the extended portion of practice, and that group very well could be your starting group. So let me know what you guys think about that. Obviously, the LSU secondary was arguably the worst unit on the team last year. Are they going to be better? Obviously, Zy Alexander is trying to get back to health. He should be back, hopefully, by the start of the season. So we'll see. There he is right there, number 24. So it should be a very interesting development period for some of these guys. This is J.K. Johnson right here. So unfortunately, we don't have that footage to break down, but you see him obviously going through this tackle drill right here. All right, and then we get to the offense here. And yes, this is a very interesting situation. Of course, Garrett getting picked off a few times. It's never really a thing you want to hear, knowing that Garrett Nussmeier does have a history of throwing picks. Not obviously, in his last start, he only had one. But for the most part, this defense felt like they took some kind of step forward. It's still a situation, though, where the offense, according to my sources, is still ahead of the defense. But when you hear of a day where they have a good day of practice, you should be somewhat excited about that while at the same time being reserved. You see Garrett Nussmeier here throw this football to Chris Hilton. Obviously, Chris is having a pretty massive spring, and even to the point where Brian Kelly talked about Chris. So, we get to hear with Garrett Nussmeier, and this is just the simple walkthrough drills, and in the background they look like some variation of Hoss Juke. That was Aaron Anderson running with the ones right there. It is important to note that when the scrimmage actually happened, the receivers with the first group was Chris Hilton, Kyron Lacy, and C.J. Daniels, the transfer from Liberty. So I find that to be very fascinating. The next takeaway here is, at least in this portion, Rickie Collins ran with the twos. Now, AJ Swann has mostly ran with the twos during this walkthrough 2-minute drill portion of practice, but judging based on what I'm hearing right now, it could be an actual QB2 battle. You see Tyree Adams back here with the ones. That starting offensive line was just your typical starting offensive line. It's good that Tyree was able to get some first-team reps earlier this week when they limited Emory Jones. But, yes, this is obviously good stuff there. C.J. Daniels right there. And, obviously, coming in with a lot of hype, and we'll see. There's Cohen Eccles at center, Ethan Callaway at right guard right there. So, should be a very fun group. Bo Bordelon right there, and that's Paul Mabenga, number 65, at left guard. And once again, it's Caleb Jackson working with the twos, and there's Rickie Collins hitting Xavier Thomas, obviously someone else that we like a lot next year for LSU. So, very interesting. I'm glad Rickie is very involved in this QB2 battle, and I'll say it over and over and over again. I would much rather Rickie be the number 2 than AJ Swann, because in a number 2 situation, I like it when a quarterback comes into the game with a different skill set than the starter. And if Rickie were to come into the game, he would have a little bit more of that dual threat juice, that little extra element that a quarterback with running ability gives you. Now, he's not a Jaden level runner. That's him throwing a dart right there to Kyle Parker. But it's still something. So we'll see how it turns out. I do believe AJ Swann eventually edges him out because of all that starters experience. But I do feel this gap is close. And then we'll take a look here with the threes. This has been, for the most part, your third group. Joe Cryer and Kari Lee are your only scholarship guys, I believe, here. And you have a lot of walk-ons. Of course, there's so many walk-ons that played during spring, especially with the third unit. That's Kai Prean. He is not a walk-on. And one thing you'll notice is there's always an overabundance of receivers at LSU, but an underabundance of offensive linemen and running back during the spring. Last year, LSU only had a couple of scholarship running backs during spring practice, and the same thing applies this year. You do have one walk-on receiver right here in Javen Nichols. That's Kamarion Pimpton in motion right there. And, you'll see basically the same plays you saw the first time around here with Shelton Stevenson. So, basically a few other things that I heard from the scrimmage was Garrett Nussmeier struggling. I actually like to hear that. I like that you're having a bad day here and there. I don't want to hear Garrett Nussmeier just absolutely lighting up the secondary every day, because, number one, that means that the defense is bad if a quarterback never has a bad practice. And then, Number two, that also means he's still out there taking chances, right? I like it when QBs throw picks in practice because that'll let them know that, hey, this type of throw may not be able to work in a game situation. So, like, air that stuff out in practice. People are going to forget about that. So I wouldn't overreact to that. And it also gives your defense some confidence. And I absolutely love to see that. And this is a play we've seen basically them rep throughout practice. Unfortunately, though, we didn't get the actual scrimmage portion to be able to break down. But I obviously spoke to a few people that were actually at the practice. And, well, the truth is Sage Ryan was the superstar to the point where I had multiple people say he was the best player on the field, which makes sense. You know, this is a 5-star in year 4. And look, this isn't totally unprecedented. We've seen defensive backs who would struggle for an entire year take a massive leap forward just that very next season. We saw it obviously not too long ago when Cordell Flott took a massive jump into being a really good player. So hopefully the same thing right now is happening with Sage Ryan and Major Burns in their new roles. That was Bob Diaco as an analyst there. But the guy that is a dude is Deshaun McBride. And it wouldn't shock me if he still remains as my number one guy in this entire high school crop. You see the specialists in the background getting some kicks off as well. But, yeah, you know, I heard Shelton also caught a touchdown. I believe it was from Rickie. It could have been from Swann. I don't quite, remember. But in these limited practice portions, I wouldn't take just too much away from anything other than if someone has a dominant practice like Sage Ryan, I think that signals something.